How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. I can't complain. The sun came out a little bit, which is nice. I
Yeah.
just got back from New York and now the sun is shining, so it felt like a nice little welcome.
Are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right. So, my first question for you is without giving any spoilers, how does season two differ from the first season?
So the first season we get a little bit more of like an overview of the characters, and so there's like a lot of ground to cover because a lot happens. Their dad passes away, and then we start to kind of like learn how that affects them as people, and like also like just about who they are and like what their personalities are like. And then in this second season, we're sort of like in the height of the pandemic, and it's a light touch of it. We don't fully like talk about it and go into the science and whatever of it, because it still is a half hour comedy. But
Right.
we do kind of sit with these characters and see how it kind of like affects their mental psyche, like sort of subconsciously. Like for Alex, at least, he's very much like a type A turns times of like type of cleaner. He's very like clear about what he needs, like, and so you sort of see those eccentricities pop out, and he gets a little bit more OCD. And you see how that sort of manifests for him. Like he very much like his like version of like therapy is like cleaning things,
Right.
so he gets very into that. And like Matilda, she kind of struggles to even get out of bed. So then, like we have a little bit of a connection where I hand her a smoothie every day and we just talk about the day, and it's just sort of our ritual. But things like that, I think, kind of like allow us to sit with the characters in this season and like really kind of see how they are in this like sort of pressure cooker of like, isolation.
Absolutely. And now, with this second season, us getting to know
Yeah.
your characters better, how has Alex evolved from the first season to the second season?
Yes, I think like he makes his feelings a little bit more vocal. I think he's a little more trepidatious in the first season to try to like talk about how he feels. And I think he like also is very aware that like Nicholas is dealing with his sisters, and so he doesn't want to be too much of an imposition. But like in this next season, I think he kind of really stands up for himself, and like you see a little bit more of his moxie and like him trying to, like stand up for like what he wants in a relationship. And Nicholas sort of being able to meet that at times and then fail to meet that at certain other times, and like the sort of realism of like being every day with the same person, and like realizing that like maybe you could have all these distractions outside of COVID world, and like you can deal with this relationship because you have other distractions. But like, when you're put in this like sort of, situation where it's just you guys, like you really have to like reckon with if you communicate well, and like if not, like how to sort of like sidestep to work around that. So yeah, I think people will start to see more different colors of Alex, and hopefully they'll like us by the end of the season. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with the first season and in the second season, we really get to see this family in transition from blending to households to now transitioning into a pandemic like the rest of us. How are
Yeah.
you guys able to build those dynamics, but also keep that comedic timing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like Josh is always big about realism. So he's like something funny, like as a byproduct of like a real situation. So he's not like looking for like, the punchline. I think sometimes he wants jokes in there, but like honestly, a lot of his comedy just comes like from like a byproduct of like the situation. So it's like, like this is a weird one, like at one point, like, like I think it's in the first season or in the second season, like Matilda tends to talk a lot, like very bluntly about like what she wants out of like something or what she wants out of a person. And, she's like mopping the floor, and like she's on a FaceTime with these, or she's on a phone call with these two friends. She's like, yeah, I want to do a threesome, sex, fondling, maybe like, nipples if you want, like something like that. And you're like, this is insane. But like, and the situation of it is hilarious, but she
Right.
fully thinks that like, it's just totally normal conversation. And she brings it up so casually, which I think is what's so funny about it. But like if she were aware of the joke and if the character and like the world was aware of it, I don't think it would be as funny. And so I think like quirks like that are something that like really is endearing. And I think that people like notice and they're like, oh, this is like refreshing. It's not like they're trying to be funny. They just like are because of the stuff they say and they're unaware of.
And with the show lightly touching the pandemic, but also filming in the pandemic, what was that like for you filming season 2?
Yeah, it was weird. It's so funny. That's a great question. Like hardly anyone's asked that, and it's so funny because it's like it was odd, like every day the last season we would hang out and we would get to talk, and Kayla would bring her like ghost meter, and she would like survey the sound stage for ghosts, and now we can't do stuff like that because it would be very much like we had to go back to our rooms, and like when we were on set, like the other, like most of the crew couldn't be on set, and when they were on the set we couldn't be on it, so it was just like very odd. And we had testing, we started off like a couple times a week, and then it was every day of the week once it started getting really sort of contentious here in LA. I mean, we were like pretty much the epicenter of the pandemic at the time, and so it was very like scary. We were like, I have to say, like, I'm really proud of us for being able to get through this, because most productions shut down just for safety preemptively, or like literally they had to because like there was an outbreak. But we felt really good to have no onset transmission. And there's obviously positives throughout the time, but they were so good about the masking safety. We took over precaution. We took there was an abundance of precaution, and it was really, really amazing, because it felt like after that, even I've like a couple things I've been like, oh, like they aren't even as like safe, as what Egbo was doing. Like I think they took extra precautions and it felt so safe. So it was an odd time, but I feel really glad that we were able to sort of withstand it without having to shut down, and that the crew, and the cast was like really aware and very like respectful of making sure that we were going to keep everyone safe.
Absolutely. And with the show, one thing that I really love is that it really shows the diversity of people, from highlighting autism, sexuality, even nationality. Do you
Yeah.
guys have these conversations about these various topics once you leave filming?
After, like, it's funny though, because during it just feels like we're in this like I don't know, weird like bubble where it feels like I think Josh has explained it before, but it feels like we're in our own little world, like because it was such a quirky little like small like tight knit family. And then when we go outside, it's only like once we get outside of it after and we're like talking to people like this about it, it's like, whoa, like there's actually like a lot of things that we're tackling here that we don't even really think about when we're doing it, because he's never like, I've talked to friends and they're like, there's directors who are like, this is the scene, like this is what represents the whole trajectory of this, of this show or this movie, and like you need to get it right, because this, and the pressure of that is insane, because you're just like, how do I live up to that? And thank gosh, like Josh was never like, pressure, whatever. He was always like, take your time, if any pressure, it would come from us. He made sure to bake in time to be able to find different like ways to play a scene. And when he directed us in this season, he was very big about like, if we wanted to do it a lot, we could, but he's like, I'll get like 3 or 4 takes of coverage in each scene and then we move on, because like I trust you guys with these characters because they're very akin to you as people. And so that felt nice. So yeah, it's like so interesting. You look back and I'm like, wow, we are like, we do tackle some things, but at the time it doesn't feel like, it just feels like we're like, like looking every day, next day, new page of dialogue, and
Yeah.
And we learn it, and it's just like a day in the life or whatever. So yeah.
And my final question for you is, what do you hope viewers can learn from this season of Everything's Gonna Be Okay?
Oh man, I hope that they can learn a little bit about codas. I like, this is very interesting. With children of deaf adults, like I play I play children of a deaf adult. I play coda, and I got to learn sign language like maybe a few years ago. I was learning it, and then I got sort of more formal training while we were doing this. But Josh like really kind of opened that window up, because he's like, I want to make your dad maybe deaf, like because I know you're learning sign language, that like something you feel like comfortable with signing. And I was like, yes, yes. And so I think like I'd love like for people to feel like they see a window into like what it might be like to be like the child of a deaf adult. I'm not in my life, but one of my best friends, Omar, who lives with me, he's deaf. And just the amount of like education I've gotten from just being friends with him is something that like I'll take with me, like, you know, years into whatever adulthood, because like I've learned so much about deaf culture and like how we live in a hearing world and so many things don't accommodate deaf folks, you know, like things like closed captions. Like it's something that, you know, it's even a bummer because like Zoom, you hope that like something like Zoom has like a feature for that. And I think maybe they do now, but like things like that aren't even accessible for folks. Like he wouldn't be able to do like a table read. He never was signed on yet, but the guy who plays my dad, CJ Jones, like he's like things like advancements don't come like have been more recent, you know, of more recent history. So he said like a role like that to be able to play like a black deaf character is like few and far between. So I feel really proud to be a part of a show that like, you know, made that happen, and that Josh wanted to do it in the right way too. He made it happen in a way where we accommodated that, and you know, we got an ASL director, a master, and then you know, an interpreter. So like, you know, he felt like he could really thrive in the environment. And you know, most times you just have to ask. It's like, you know, they just do a little bit of a game of Tetris to move things around here and there, but you know, it's not as difficult as everyone makes it out to be to try to accommodate these things, these big budgets. A lot of time they find out that the number crunching that SAG did, that it's almost something as few as $500, you know, which in a budget, that's, you know, nothing. So it's like, you know, I think more people think of it as like an insurmountable feat than it actually is. So I'm excited for people to see that. And I hope they take
Me
away
too.
a learning experience from that too. Yeah. Yeah. I hope you like
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much and congratulations on the show. And thank you for the work that you
it.
do. It's very valuable.
Thanks, Kat. I appreciate you. Have a
Have
great
a good
weekend.
one.